The Belgian Sikh community is mainly concentrated in large cities, with the exception of Saint-Tron, which is a rural agricultural town, small in size, but with a large Sikh community with a very particular history, as we will see. The first contacts between the Sikhs and Belgium date back from the First World War, but it wasn't until the 1970s that the Sikhs were settling in Belgium, and not until the end of the 1980s before the community gained some permanency. But the first encounters just date back to the First World War, when the Sikhs came to Belgium as soldiers. In the British Army and the British colonial imaginary, the Sikhs were seen as a martial race. And so they were disproportionally present in the Indian British Army. Hence they also came to Flanders fields to fight, especially between 1914 and 1915, after which a lot of Indian lives were lost. The Sikhs who died in Belgium are commemorated on the Menin Gate Memorial in Wipers, where 125 names of Sikhs can be found. The contribution of these Sikh soldiers during the First World War still fill the community in Belgium with pride and give them a claim of belonging in this land. But the first settlers came as part of another colonial history. They were immigrants, they were expelled from East Africa by the dictator Idi Amin in 1972. He ordered all the East African Asians to leave the country within 90 days, and while most of them could go to the UK, a lot of them could not, and so they were dispersed over the entire globe, including to Belgium. That community of East African Asians comprised of 175 people, but only 8 families were Sikhs. It is quite probable that they knew each other already, but we cannot speak of a community because the group was simply too small, and if they formed a community, it was with the larger East African Asians rather than only the Sikhs. But in the 80s, these families decided to come together in a rented location here in Brussels to pray together, to celebrate festivities, festivals, and to sing hymns or kirtan. It was only during the 1980s that the number of Sikh immigrants steadily increased to Belgium. During that period, many young Punjabis sought an escape from the violence, the deteriorating circumstances in Punjab, where a conflict had erupted between the Khalistani movement and the central government of Indira Gandhi, as we have already learned in the Academy presentation of Professor Kallewaard. In 1984, the conflict really erupted after the murder of Indira Gandhi by her Sikh bodyguards and a pogrom in Delhi that killed at least 4,000 Sikhs. So they started to flee and arriving all across the world, but also in Belgium. Throughout the 1980s, however, most Punjabis did not qualify for asylum in Belgium. Only families with small children were granted asylum here and could attain a refugee status. Nevertheless, the borders for Sikhs were never fully closed, and this had several reasons. On the one hand, those Sikhs that were already established in Belgium during the 1970s could help new arrivals to find jobs, but also to circumvent the system in a certain way. A typical journey in the 80s involved a person coming by plane to Belgium with a tourist visum for a week or 2 weeks and then overstaying this visum to result in an undocumented stay. The fact that there were already some Sikhs present in Belgium really helped with the settlement, particularly because they could redirect these persons to where there was work, and that was at the time in the Hesbaye, or the fruit farming region in Limburg. On the other hand, that fruit farming region also had a special work regime with special work permits that permitted migrants to work even if their stay was not regulated. So they could work even if they had no residence permits. Their labor was in very high demand because in the 1980s the tax regime in Belgium had changed so that housewives and early pensioners could not do seasonal labor anymore, and for students it had become increasingly less interesting to do fruit picking during the summer, so there was a severe shortage of labor. Farmers were very happy to receive Sikhs who came from Punjab, who had agricultural knowledge and know-how, and who were good workers. So chain migration occurred very quickly, and many Indians came upon invitation of these farmers to the region. Sikhs who settled here in that time remember well the very rudimentary circumstances in which they were housed by the farmers, with often substandard sanitary circumstances and a very overpopulated crowd. Oftentimes they had to switch beds, one person sleeping there at night, the other during the day, because the space was so crowded. But this didn't stop them, especially because wages were significantly higher here, and it did not stop them to try to find opportunities to work in the fruit sector in Belgium. In the early 90s, the community was sufficiently large to start looking for a permanent place of worship. They wanted to create a gurdwara where they could convene every week, and this was in specific demand by those families who had a political refugee status. They found a place in Halmaal, a very small municipality next to Sint-Truiden, where they erected the first Gurdwara, Gurdwara Sangat Sahib, in 1993. The political refugees who ran the Gurdwara and who were in charge, and especially the women, attached more importance to religious symbols, such as the 5Ks. Especially the uncut hair and beard became more important. Sikhs who previously cut their hair and beards to merge with the local community decided now to grow their hair again and to grow full beards so that they also became much more visible with their turbans and their specific outlook. Indian politics also became an essential part of the Gurdwara, where you could see the photos of the martyrs, also known as shaheeds, in the central hall. Many well-known Sikh activists of the Khalistan movement were pictured there and prominently displayed. But in the 90s, the Sikhs also began to struggle with more racial discrimination and legal issues. These problems augmented as the community grew, but it also had to do with a new political climate, a changing political climate that regarded all non-Western migrants as problematic, and that resulted in the first major national victory of the Flemish National Far-Right Party Vlaams Blok in 1991. Sikhs were of course very visible targets for racists, especially in Sint-Truiden, Saint-Tron, which was still a white town at the time. And in the summer of 1993, a bomb was planted in a Sikh house in the city by racist youngsters. Although the bomb did not cause any harm or did not kill anyone, it permanently changed the relationship between the local community and the Sikhs, and many sought ways out of the city into bigger cities, particularly here in the Brussels capital region. This was also spurred by the fact that labor control augmented in the mid-1990s. Police raids by helicopters, search for illegal migrant workers in the fields of the Hasselt region and threatened the livelihood of the Sikhs there. So they started to search for other opportunities. In 1999, a first Gurdwara erected in Vilvoorde near Brussels signaled the shift from the fruit farming region to the big cities. And also a Gurdwara 6 years later in Liège showed that people were looking opportunities to work and live in bigger cities. But in 1999, the Belgian government also understood that something had to be done about a larger growing group of undocumented migrants in Belgium. This group did not comprise of Sikhs alone, of course. Between the fall of the wall in 1989 and 1999, the group of immigrants had significantly grown from Eastern Europe, of course, but also from conflicts in the former Soviet republics and in other more far away regions such as Congo. While in Limburg the Sikhs were the largest group, in other provinces their numbers were much smaller. But many Sikhs could prove that they were working for 6 years or more in Belgium and living there permanently. So they also attained their regularizations very quickly and easily. They also often opted for a naturalization, becoming Belgian citizens, and upon their regularization, they would go to India for family reunification or family formation, seeking brides to get married. Therefore, from 2000 onwards, women and children began to arrive in larger numbers, giving the community a more permanent character, although men still remained represented in the community. The arrival of the families and the growth of the community in general also led to economic diversification. Whereas they had worked mainly in fruit farming, they would now become either landowners or start businesses as entrepreneurs. The Sikhs invented the night shops, which were small shops that opened after the regular closing hours of the supermarkets. They were very, very popular with partygoers looking for something to snack or to drink after normal shops had closed, but they have since become a very well-known and fully integrated part of the urban landscape. Who doesn't buy an egg at the night shop once that is necessary, right? Because the community grew, they also started to play an increasing role in politics. In Belgian politics, they started to advocate for the recognition of the religion, something that hasn't happened yet, but also to advocate for the eradication of the ban of headscarves in schools, particularly to give the boys the opportunity to go to school with their turbans. However, the 2000s also marked a period of internal division within the Sikh community. The economic diversification and the regularization led to new social divides within the Belgian community, between Sikhs with and without papers, with and without work, and with and without their families in Belgium. These social divides disrupted harmony and eventually led to fractures within the community. The major conflict evolved around the old Gurdwara in Halmal. The building structure was falling apart. It was not nearly big enough to host the ever-growing community, and it needed to be replaced, but that didn't happen partly due to unwillingness, political unwillingness on behalf of the city of Sint-Truiden. A solution could not be found, but it also led to struggles over financial means within the Gurdwara committee. and leading to a rift. One part of the community separating themselves into a new Gurdwara at the outskirts of Sint-Truiden in Hoepertingen, where it really became of political importance which Gurdwara you could choose. At the end of the decade, however, these tensions disappeared because people gained more permanent status in Belgium due to a new regularization campaign in 2009, giving more people the opportunity to go to find better employment and the like. But also, the new arrival of people who had nothing to do with the tension led to the reality that people could choose the Gurdwara based on where they were living rather than based on the faction that they adhered to. Once again, the situation of the Belgian Sikhs was embedded in the broader story of Belgian policy towards immigration. After these tensions subsided, the Belgian Sikh community could actively engage in more cultural activities, such as regular Gurdwara services, religious processions of Nagar Kirtans, and cultural events such as Kabaddi tournaments or Gatka tournaments, and religious festivals such as Vaisakhi. They also became more involved in teaching Sikh culture, religion, and language to the youth in their own communities. And as the community grew, the traditional bond between the Sikhs and the fruit farming region of Belgium has decreased. This was also due to the arrival of new groups of people who had nothing to do with the original settlers of the 1980s. And they would settle in completely different towns, such as Ostende or Ghent. An important group to mention is the group of Sikhs from Afghanistan who fled the conflict there in 2001. They started to arrive in Antwerp mainly, where they got organized in 2013 and erected a Gurdwara in Deurne near Antwerpen, which is now a very large community as well, and a very large and modern Gurdwara with a state-of-the-art kitchen and food hall. Meanwhile, in Sint-Truiden, in Halmaal, the problems with the old Gurdwara couldn't be resolved. And in 2014, matters got worse when a fire put half of the Gurdwara in ashes. In the aftermath, another group split off and established a new Gurdwara in Alke, where they had their own organization. However, finally, with the intervention of the city council, the Sikhs were awarded a plot of land in 2018 and started building what would become the largest Gurdwara of the Benelux. It was opened in 2021 and could thereafter reunite the community once again, having their pride in the golden domes that could be seen in the Limburg fields from wide and far.